Welcome to CFRS Training. This is part one of our two Getting Started segments. The goals of CFR Training are to introduce providers to the CFR Manual and the CFR Software, to provide New York State agencies contact information for specific questions not covered during this training session, to help providers become familiar with the CFR core, claiming, and supplemental schedules, and to discuss important policies, principles, and rules regarding completion of the CFR. Here are phone numbers for assistance. Note that for two of the state agencies, the numbers for questions about your state aid payments are not the same as for CFR questions. New York State SED did not participate in this training project. Any questions regarding SED issues should be directed to your SED contact. The CFR Manual contains 9 general overview sections, a section for each of the core, claiming, and supplemental schedules, numerous appendices containing detailed information, and CFR manuals are available online at the web address listed. This is what the New York State SED website's CFR page looks like. This is where you can get copies of transmittal letters, manuals, and file for extensions. You can get access to manuals dating back several years. The CFR is used as a year-end cost report that documents service provider expenses and revenues of the 4 funding agencies on one consolidated report. The cost report information is used for rate and fee setting, cost of living increases, and fiscal analysis and policy development by the New York State agencies, the legislature, and the governor's office. It is also a year-end state aid claiming document that is the basis of payment for your final claim for the CFR period. Schedules DMH2 and DMH3 are the claiming documents for your contracts. Full accrual accounting must be used when reporting fiscal information on schedules CFR 1 through CFR 6 and the DMH1. Schedules DMH2 and DMH3 may be completed on an accrual, modified accrual, or cash basis. Filers of many abbreviated CFRs may complete all required schedules on accrual, modified accrual, or cash basis accounting. Full accrual accounting means units of service are counted when provided. Revenues are recognized when earned on a date of service basis, not when received. Expenses are recognized when incurred. Salary expense for personal services is reported in the period incurred, not in the period the paycheck was issued. Therefore, the totals will not match your quarterly and annual payroll reports. Also, asset purchases are depreciated over the useful life of the item when the initial cost is $5,000 or more and the useful life is 2 years or more. There are 2 general categories of CFR submissions: full CFRs and abbreviated CFRs. Full versus abbreviated depends on the type of programs you operate and the type and amount of funding you receive. To determine whether a full or abbreviated CFR is required, check the submission matrices in Section 2 of the CFR Manual. When the service provider is funded by more than one New York State agency, the most stringent reporting requirements apply for all required CFR filings. Remember, for OPWDD, if your agency receives $1 of Medicaid revenue for our programs, then you will be filing a full CFR. This is the submission matrix from Section 2 of the manual. There is a general matrix and agency-specific matrices. Select the appropriate matrix for your agency and answer a series of yes or no questions to determine the correct submission type for your agency and other filing requirements. Note, for the purposes of determining your CFR type, Medicaid managed care is considered to be Medicaid. CFR reporting periods are generally based on the geographic location of a service provider's corporate headquarters. This CFR would be inclusive of all programs operated and known as your primary standard reporting period. For example, if the agency headquarters is in New York City, the agency will file a fiscal period CFR with an end date of June 30th. If the agency headquarters is upstate or on Long Island, the agency will file a calendar period CFR with an end date of December 31st. If your agency has a contract for one or more programs funded on a period different than your agency's standard CFR reporting period, an additional abbreviated or mini-abbreviated CFR must be completed for the non-standard funding period. The most common off-cycle contracts are for special legislative grants known as member items. The additional abbreviated or mini-abbreviated CFR will use the reporting period specified by the LGU, DDRO, or the specific state agency for the direct contract. If the end date of your CFR is June 30th, the due date for filing with OMH is November 1st, although you can go online to request an automatic extension to December 1st. For OASAS and OPWDD, the due date is December 1, and no extension is required or available beyond that date. If the date of your CFR is December 31st, the due date is May 1 for OMH, with an extension available to June 1. For OASAS and OPWDD, a December 31st CFR is due on June 1st. Late submissions of a CFR may result in a sanction or penalty being imposed against the service provider. Each state agency has a specific method of imposing penalties. Please consult the CFR Manual or your respective agency for further details. For OPWDD filers, an additional penalty of 50% of your Medicaid payments will be imposed if the CFR, financial statements, and certification pages, which are due on December 1st for fiscal filers, are not received by February 1. This penalty will be effective on August 1st. If the CFR, financial statements, and certification pages, which are due on June 1 for calendar filers, are not received by August 1st, a 50% penalty for waiver programs will be effective on the following February 1st. If your agency is funded through an LGU contract, check with the county or New York City for their specific requirements regarding CFR and final claim submissions. Sending copies of the certification schedules to the county, New York City, or the regional office does not fulfill your filing requirement with the CFR Units in Albany. CFRs are prepared using CFR software and submitted via the internet. Also, the independently audited provider financial statements should be electronically uploaded from the same web page. In addition, copies of the following certification schedules should be uploaded through the CFRS software by the submission due date. A signed copy of the CFR-I, the CFR II or II-A if required, the CFR III if required, and the new CFR IV. The submission of consolidated financial statements, including all affiliates, are required to be submitted electronically as PDF files through the CFR upload process. In addition, financial statements reflecting information on the provider as a standalone entity should be uploaded if available. Providers that are required to have a federal audit based on OMB A133 guidance must upload a copy of the audit report to the funding New York State agency via the CFRS software. More information on the federal audit requirements can be found at the web address listed. Please keep in mind that financial statements should only be uploaded one time for a reporting period unless the statement has been amended by the CPA. Also, never upload draft copies of financial statements. And the CFR software allows for the filing of financial statements for prior periods. CFR audited financial statements should correspond to the CFR period if possible. If your agency's corporate fiscal year is different than the CFR reporting period, submit the financial statements with an end of cycle date that falls within the CFR reporting period. This is the financial statement upload screen at the OMH website. Be sure not to upload financial statements that are locked by your CPA. Important. Certification pages can and should now be uploaded through the software. The process is similar to uploading financial statements. A new certification page, the CFR IV, is now required by OASAS, OMH, and OPWDD. Multiple pages may be included in one scan for the upload. However, the CFR IV must be submitted separately. Electronic submission is the preferred method of certification submission. However, if you are unable to upload your certifications through the program, OMH will continue to accept forms mailed to the address listed on the slide. OASAS and OPWDD will continue to accept emailed copies at the addresses listed. The CFR software is free and available for download at the OMH website. This program is a common software platform for the 4 New York State agencies that use the CFR. It requires entry of agency information and program site information. Only program codes and funding source codes valid for the CFR reporting period can be used. The software is updated twice a year. The CFR software allows a single version of the software to be used for current and prior reporting periods. The single version of the software can be used for both calendar and July to June fiscal reporting periods, and the latest version of CFR software must be used for completing year-end CFRs and final state aid claims. The Document Control Number, or DCN, is a key component of your CFR. The CFR software assigns a unique DCN to CFR submissions each time that the final edits are run successfully. This is known as the validation process. The assigned DCN is stored in the upload data file, is associated with all of the data elements contained in the CFR, and is displayed on all pages of printed CFR schedules. The DCN on the signed certification schedules submitted must match the DCN of the uploaded CFR files. Keep in mind, it is important to back up your data once the edits have been passed. The OMH website hosts a CFR homepage. This is where you can get the latest version of the software, upload your CFRs and financial statements, and subscribe to the CFR announcement mailing list. This is the page for subscribing to the CFR announcement mailing list. Each agency should have at least 2 people enrolled to receive emails announcing the availability of new versions of the software and, importantly, notice of patches released to correct flaws in the program which have been detected and corrected. If you encounter difficulty in downloading the CFRS software or the CFR upload process, or in getting the program to work on your computer system, you should call the Helpdesk. The number is 1-800-HELP-NYS or 1-800-435-7697. Select option 2. Here are some tips which will make completion of the CFR easier. Program payroll and fringe benefits should be reconciled to the general ledger on a monthly or quarterly basis. Staff working in more than one job function and/or more than one program should be carefully monitored. Expenses and revenues should be monitored on a regular basis and compared against approved budgets. If you require a budget modification, it is easier to get that approved if you apply before the end of the reporting period. Internal financial reporting systems should be structured to capture the cost categories included in the CFR. Units of service provided by programs should be tracked on a regular basis. And non-allowable costs should be tracked also on a regular basis for easy identification when preparing the CFR. In order for an expense to be reimbursable, it must be generally recognized as ordinary, necessary, and for the direct benefit of the client. Unreasonable and unnecessary costs are not allowable. Providers operating DMH programs should refer to Appendix X of the CFR Manual for a list of some, but not all, non-allowable costs. All non-allowable costs included as an expense on any line of CFR Schedules 1, 2, 3, or DMH 1 and 2 must also be reported on the adjustments or non-allowable cost lines of the applicable schedules. The following are some examples of non-allowable costs that must be adjusted out of the reported costs. Costs that are not properly related to patient care and principally afford diversion, amusement, or entertainment to the owners, operators, or employees. Costs related to the purchase of alcoholic beverages. Costs resulting in violations of or failure to comply with federal, state, and local government laws, rules, and regulations, and costs of training afforded staff that does not directly relate to the fulfillment of their required duties. Related party transactions. The allowable cost of a related party transaction is the lower of the related organization's or individual's actual costs or the fair market value of providing the goods or services supplied. All related party transactions involving OASAS, OMH, OPWDD, and SED programs, as well as entity-wide agency administration, must be disclosed and detailed on CFR 5. All excess related party transaction costs, as defined above, included as an expense on any line of the CFR schedule, must be reported on the adjustments or non-allowable cost line of the applicable CFR schedule. Fringe benefit expenses that are not reasonable and available to all employees are non-allowable and must be adjusted out of the reported costs on the applicable CFR schedule. Non-allowable fringe benefit costs include, but are not limited to, supplemental executive retirement plans or any non-qualified deferred compensation plans subject to IRC subsection 457F. That concludes Getting Started, Part 1.